Welcome to Nutty Buddy Sports.
Okay, so we mentioned Caruso, we mentioned Billy Donovan. Let's talk about your Chicago Bulls. Let's go off season first. You signed Lonzo Ball, Caruso, and DeMar DeRozan. So big overhauls. How did you feel at that point when you saw what the team looked like? How did you feel at that point as a Bulls fan? Like what kind of season you were going to have?
I was excited, as a feeling. I was pretty excited. I was kind of shocked to see the DeMar DeRozan signing because that kind of just came out of nowhere. Like I wasn't seeing like all these rumors. Oh, DeMar's going to sign. It was like a couple of days and then it just boom, it happened. I was excited about it. I was like, okay, hey, that's a proven player. Maybe he's not been quite as good as he was with Toronto, but I think he can offer something. We'll look at him now. I mean, he's, absolutely been fantastic. But especially with Caruso and Lonzo, I was excited about that because I'm like, those are two guys that have definitely shown they can be real assets to a team. They can offer kind of that, glue guy. They're that glue guy. They can make the assists. They can get the steals. They can play good defense. Lonzo is a better point guard than they've had in several years, probably back to Derrick Rose. Because honestly, as a Bulls fan the last few years, it's been miserable. Pre-Billy Donovan, they didn't even have these, the players and the personnel to put together a competitive roster. I mean, they're running out there Ryan Arcidiacono and guys you probably never heard of before as starting point guard, for the Chicago Bulls. That's just something that was really holding them back. So now I think they're so much more consistent. I think they're not relying solely on players, but on a team basis. And I think that's where Billy Donovan comes to tie all of that in. I was excited. And of course, I think my excitement is proven to be true is, I'm pretty happy with where they are right now.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I went back and I listened to my thoughts, like when it happened. And really it just came down to like, can DeRozan and LaVine make it work? That's the thing. I love the Caruso and Ball signing because they don't have to have the ball to be effective. No. In fact, Lonzo Ball doesn't like to have the ball too much. Right. Like he likes to pass it. I'm just like, that'll work. But the question really is, did DeRozan and LaVine fit if they can make it work? Now, every team I feel like needs two playmakers. You need two playmakers and they both play make. And I think that's what has surprised me the most is that they fit so well so quickly.
Yeah, and that is surprising because I thought that it would have been hard to get both of them the ball the way they wanted to. But honestly, I got to give a lot of credit to DeMar DeRozan because I think he had such an attitude shift. I'm not saying that he's not always been a guy that can make plays for his teammates, but I almost think coming in, he realized, okay, I got to be a little bit different. My style of play has to be different. I can take the big shots and I can make the big shots, but I also need to incorporate my teammates more. And maybe it was a sit down with the coaches and they're like, look, you can be a really beneficial part of this team if you kind of change the way you play your game a little bit. I'm just speculating here on that, but I almost feel like he kind of switched up a little bit to be a more selfless player. And I think now that he's distributing is also allowed him to get more open opportunities now that teams are forced to guard all five guys on the floor, not just DeMar DeRozan. And I think that's why he's taken such a big leap this year. I understand some people were like, oh, that's a bad signing. He's kind of exiting his prime. He's getting to be a little bit older, but he's proving that he was an amazing signing and probably one of the best of the offseason. I mean, NBA All-Star starter. I mean, that's a pretty good, asset to your resume and definitely looking for more in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also think like his sort of, what do you want to call it? I don't want to call it exile, but his stint with the Spurs helped him.
Yeah.
Because what people don't realize, even though the Spurs weren't like a great team, it wasn't his fault necessarily that the roster was reshaping after losing Kawhi and Aldridge and the retirement of Tim Duncan. He averaged more assists as a Spur than he is right now with the Bulls. So he sort of learned how to be a playmaker. I think like that's something that was lost when he came back because we're all thinking, oh, well, Toronto DeMar, right? Like Toronto DeMar. The other thing is unlike what we talked about with Westbrook and LeBron, I think Zach LaVine is a very fluid player. Like he can catch the ball and shoot. He can come off screens and shoot. He's explosive, and he can also play with the ball. So when you pair two guys like that together, it's a much more easier fit.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the only thing, and I will say something bad about Zach LaVine, and I think even though he's still a little bit of a younger player, I mean, he's been around the block in this league, and I think, you know, he's definitely a proven guy. Sometimes he can get a little emotional in the game and kind of starts forcing things. But overall, I mean, compared to, as you mentioned, Russell Westbrook and some of these other guys, he's so fluid. And I think they've really created a great team bond. Everything that I'm hearing is that they're just very comfortable with each other. And I think it's just becoming more and more comfortable as the season goes along. Hopefully next year we get a very similar looking group, maybe with a few additions. I just like the way they're playing. They're fun to watch. That's what I said to, you know, my dad and some of my friends, that now they're fun to watch again because they're making plays. They're making big shots. It's just a fun basketball team to watch.
Yeah, and once they start to get more healthy too, right? Because I think Caruso is coming back and Lonzo. And obviously LaVine has that knee thing. So hopefully they can stay healthy moving forward. Hot take for you, though. I actually think that LaVine is a very underrated player.
I do, yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Statistically, he's actually better than Devin Booker. And a lot of people think that Devin Booker is just like great player or whatever, but I actually think LaVine's better. He's more explosive, and he's statistically better. So I don't know. Anyway, just to throw that out there to Bulls fans, that I think LaVine's better than Booker. So you're good there. Okay. So another thing I wanted to talk to you about that I texted you actually about is the trade deadline. So one of my sneaky losers that nobody talked about was the Chicago Bulls. And I'm just going to give my, like, just real quick, you know, and then you can rebuttal. It's basically just that the rest of the East got better and they didn't do anything. So they're number 2, I think, right now in the East. They were number 1 when at the time that the trade deadline happened. And I felt like it would have been good for them in a year where it seems like anybody could win a championship, right? Because there isn't like that team out there that you're scared of or whatever. I'm like, this is the year to go for it. And I feel like they're one piece away. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the way I feel. And the fact they didn't do anything, I was like, and the other teams did. The other teams, top tier teams in the East did. I just felt like they were a little bit of a loser.
I would agree with that because I think there was a lot of opportunity for them to be better. You know, I think a lot of things floated around about Jeremy Grant. I think specifically was one of the big ones because that's kind of a positional need for the Bulls, is kind of that power forward. The guy that they were going to try to run out there was Patrick Williams, and he lasted 5 games before he went down for the year. I know a lot of people have mixed feelings on Patrick Williams. I know that he was talked a lot about being one of those pieces that they would have traded, you know, and for a Jeremy Grant or a championship winning caliber guy. I think that they could have done it and I wouldn't have been mad at it myself. But honestly, the fact that they stayed, I'm not hating either. I'm kind of on the fence. And even if they don't and they lose in the first or second round, I'm still going to not be mad at it because I think the way that the front office works, I think they're very smart. You know, they know, they've seen many teams. They've seen a lot of transactions. They know what a winning team looks like. And I think they have a lot of confidence in this team. I think that adds a boost of confidence to the guys that are currently on the roster. Hey, they know they still feel confident enough that we can win. They weren't so desperate to go out and get a guy because they feel like with the right system and everybody healthy, these guys can still go out and be competitive. And I definitely agree with that, especially considering majority, if not all of these guys, you could bring back next year within some additions. So I think the Bulls are at a spot right now where, they didn't get better, but I think only thing that's holding them back is some injuries. And I think once they get this team complete, especially if Patrick Williams, Alex Caruso, and Lonzo Ball are all playing at the same time with this current roster they have, I mean, watch out. You know, they have some pieces that in a sense they would be adding to their team that that are already there. They just
Yeah.
need to get them healthy to play again.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yeah, so I'm weird. I'm a Detroit Pistons fan. That's
Okay.
my favorite team. So I actually was like, the Bulls should trade for Jeremy Grant because I was on that bandwagon because, well, number one, the Pistons are rebuilding, and the fact if we would have got Patrick Williams in the deal, I'm just like, well, that would be nice to put next to Cade. The second thing for the Bulls is like, if Patrick Williams becomes Jeremy Grant, I think that the Bulls would be happy with that, right?
Yeah.
Like if that's his floor, the Bulls are like, yeah, we'll take Jeremy Grant. So, the third thing along with that is that I feel like where the Bulls might struggle a little bit is what you mentioned is sort of that need in position is when you're facing the Bucks and the Nets, right? Because although Jeremy Grant is not going to lock down Giannis, he's not going to lock down Durant. Nobody can, but he will make them work, and that's what I feel like. As a Bulls, somebody who's looking at the Bulls as far as getting to the championship, when you have to play those two players and you're making it sort of easier on them because you don't have Patrick Williams, you don't have that defender right now, go out, get a Jeremy Grant. All of a sudden you have somebody who's going to make them work. It gives you a better chance of getting through those series. So that's why I would have done that trade.
Yeah, they're a little undersized, and I definitely agree with that. That's been a big need, even at like backup center. They have Tony Bradley, who, doesn't play a lot of minutes, and he's not amazing. I mean, he's, a third string guy realistically in the league on, a good team, but he's had to step in and play some more minutes behind Nikola Vucevic. But the Bulls did just go out and get Tristan Thompson, who was bought out. I'm a fan of that move because he's not really a power forward, but he adds another layer to their interior defense, to, rebounding. He's not a scorer, but they don't need him to be.
Right.
I think my only reservation with getting Jeremy Grant would have been, Jeremy Grant, in a sense, can be a little bit of a playmaker. He can make his own shots and things. He likes to have the ball, and he scores a lot of points, and he's really good. I just don't think that they wanted to take that risk to disrupt the flow of DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine. I think, if anything, they wanted to add more of a complementary piece. I think Jacob Poeltl was one of those guys from the Spurs. They were trying to add a big man to their team. They couldn't make the deal and they couldn't get it done. But I think that would have been best case scenario, especially you wouldn't have had to give up a guy like Patrick Williams. I think the Bulls are concerned about now and in the future, and I think that's very smart. They don't want to put all their eggs into one basket, because next year they may be able to get that guy where they take that step up in free agency or via trade or something. There's just a lot of mixed feelings, and I think it's really hard to say, and I think that's where the front office was as well. But at the end of the day, they decided to stay where they were, and I think that's the safest route, and I think a route that also can prove to be good. You just have to give it a little more time.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I would say, like, I'm with you on that. Is like, you want to kind of build now and for the future, but the other part is like, if you win a championship,
right,
you will sacrifice the future for a championship now, right? That's so like, and Jeremy Grant's only 26 or 27. I agree that he might have disrupted the flow a little bit. So that's a great point. The only other thing that it would have done, though, is you would have had a little bit more insurance in case you had another injury, a big injury, yes. Like if LaVine had to miss a playoff series for whatever. But you're right. It's like, it's the same with Memphis, right? Like Memphis was also in trade rumors, but like, do you want to disrupt the flow? We're third in the West. Why,
Yeah, don't disrupt the flow, because I think at this point in the season, you trust your guys, and you mentioned how fluid Zach LaVine is. I don't think that they would necessarily say, oh, they don't trust us to make the big plays by bringing in Jeremy Grant. But at the same time, when you've got more guys that, want to touch the ball and you're moving around a little bit, that can kind of change the narrative of your team. And I think at this point in the year, teams are a little bit less willing to take a chance to try to incorporate these guys, because they want to be playing their best ball right now.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in 2 months, because they want to have a top seed. They want to go into the playoffs feeling good, not, oh, we're just starting to figure it out. They want to be able to figure it out right now. So I think the safer route was to do nothing, and very similar with the Grizzlies, as you mentioned. But again, there's a lot of what ifs. What if they did trade for Jeremy Grant? Could they win a championship? What if they traded for somebody else? Could they win a championship? I guess we'll never know.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is if Chicago was maybe a 6 seed instead of a 1 seed, like first in the, maybe they would be more prone to act right now, be like, hey, we just need that last piece. But they're like, hey, we're doing good, so we might as well stay. Now, the other part of me is I like playoff basketball is so different than regular season basketball. And we see that every year where number 1 seeds, like they don't always get to the finals. And there's a reason for that. And that's where I'll go, like DeMar DeRozan knows this because he's been in Toronto, a high seed who's fallen to the better, the player Cavs and LeBron. But yeah, so thanks so much for listening to Gavin and I break down his Chicago Bulls with the offseason that they had and all the roster moves they made and the lack of moves and trade deadlines. And as you can tell, he's excited about the Chicago Bulls moving forward. How do you feel about the Chicago Bulls moving forward? Let us know in the comments below. Like the channel, subscribe, and if you'd like to listen to the rest of the podcast, the link for Apple and Spotify are down below in the description below. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoy, and we will talk to you guys soon.